Welcome to ENside Politics, our weekly podcast on everything you need to know about San Antonio politics. I'm Greg Jefferson, Metro Editor of the San Antonio Express News, and I'm joined today by City Hall reporter Megan Rodriguez.
Morning. And
our special guest, retired Bexar County Judge Nelson Wolff. Welcome. How's it going?
Great to be here.
Great to be anywhere. So you've been out of power for 2 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
2 years.
And you've been, writing 6 books? I understand, like
books.
6, 7, 8 books. What are you working on?
I'm working on a book. In fact, I hope it gets out in April. The publisher has it. It's called The Elysian Fields of Baseball. It's a spirituality of nature and how the lore and tradition of baseball related to nature. And it carries it on through from when they began playing ball on the Elysian Fields of Hoboken in 1830s on up through, and it has, a chapter on women playing ball. It has one on the Negro Leagues. We have a great tradition here. It has the bad stuff that Major League Baseball did.
Segregate, yeah, right.
Terrible, terrible, terrible things they did. And then, I grew up here playing Little League Baseball, and it kind of takes you through there. And then played 16 years in the senior hardball league. And so, it's a kind of carries you through the evolution of baseball and what it means to America. And
so you're the philosopher king of baseball.
And for what?
You're the philosopher king of baseball.
Yeah. So anyways,
the meaning of it all.
It's kind of interesting. I think you'd probably like it if you like baseball.
Well, we'll check it out. Is there anything you miss about politics? And coupled with that, how has politics changed over the last 2 years? Local politics.
Well, number one, I don't miss it. I have not even stepped foot in the courthouse since I left.
Really?
I believe when you leave, and you get out of everybody's way. And so I don't try to, if they call me and ask me stuff, I'll give them my best advice, and that's about it. I don't have anything that I want or pushing for. But I do keep up with it, and I do help some candidates. I try to find, up-and-coming candidates that I think might be good to try to help. But I enjoy what I'm doing and time I spend with students. So I don't miss.
So you're a guest lecturer?
Yeah, I lecture at UTSA and at St. Mary's, and I lecture in the honors school at UTSA. There's about 2,500 students out of the 35,000 that are in honor classes. So it's fun,
Is it public administration or what do you
public administration, and then in public health, and then in criminal justice, because we were so involved in criminal justice. Those three, and but it's fun, It's they pay me a stipend. And I go to the class that the professor wants me to go to. I probably talk 10 or 15 minutes, then try to engage the students in terms of getting them involved in whatever issues we're talking about or what their lives or how they're doing. And then I sign books and I go home.
That's awesome.
Well,
it's a pretty good gig.
Do the kids have any attention span whatsoever?
It depends. I've had some classes that really, really interact very well. And then I'll have some others that will listen, and then you try to engage them, and sometimes they're a little hard to get going. Once you get them going and they feel comfortable, it's okay. But some of these young people are, they're bright bunnies and doing pretty good.
Good.
Well, we've got a city election coming up pretty soon here, May 3rd, and a lot of open seats. There are 4 of the 10 council seats that are open. All the others that aren't open, of course, have folks challenging for the most part. And then I think everyone's eyes, though, are on the mayor's race right now because Mayor Ron Nirenberg is about to be out of office. He's terming out. And so wanted to talk to you a little bit about that race. We'll know exactly who all is running come February 14th when filing closes, but there's already lots of folks who have thrown their hat in the ring. And so is there anybody, whether it be on the city council side or the mayoral race, that you are planning on endorsing?
Well, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to endorse anybody. Maybe the runoff because the field is so big. I've met with several of them. It's really interesting to do that, to kind of see what their thinking is and where they're going, and, trying to give them the best advice I can give them.
Who have you met with so far? And
this morning I met with Gina Jones. Is that right? Gina Jones. And then I met with Beto and Rolando Pablos and a couple of council people, Manny. And so, there's 11. In fact, when I ran for mayor, it was 11 of us. There was the incumbent mayor and 2 other city council people. It's kind of hard right now to figure out, who might prevail. I would assume Rolando Pablos would have the most money because he's a Republican and is tied into some pretty good bucks. But
he cleaned up in the last 6. Yeah, his latest campaign finance report put him at the top.
He's doing pretty well. He's getting a great deal of support from Republicans and some independents too. So he appears at this point to have the most resources, and that's important to have. Beto has been matching his contributions with his own money. Gina Jones has money set aside for the campaign. I don't know, those 3, I think, money is going to be important because...
Yeah, those have been the top 3 fundraisers so
they're
far,
the top
outsiders who aren't in city council right now.
You really got to have the dollars. You really shouldn't be firing your shots till you see the white of their eyes. You're not going to see the white of their eyes till the last 30 days or so of the campaign. And if you haven't plan your resources for those last 30 days, and you got a problem. And so it's going to, as you see them move along and whatever positions they take, and then you see them get closer to the election, we'll have a better idea of what kind of resources they'll have to be able to keep up with it.
So you said you've met with Gina Ortiz-Jones,
yes,
Beto Altamirano, Rolando Pablos. Have you
Rolando Pablos,
okay. Manny Pelaez.
Yeah.
Let's start with Pablos. What do you make of him?
Of who?
Rolando Pablos.
It's been a while. It's probably been a month or 2 since I've talked with him. He's a solid guy. I think we would call him a moderate Republican. I don't think he's over on that far right goofy side, and he's built up a pretty good cross section of the establishment, in terms of deal. The question becomes, what will the voters think about his ties to Abbott and to the lieutenant governor? How they will react to that. But I think going in to the race now, he kind of sits over here with a pretty big chunk of money, and I would guess more money will come. And I think he's the guy that will have the greatest resources going in.
So he's he was an appointee of both Governor Abbott and Governor Rick Perry back in the day.
Yeah.
Could he be hurt by, and this is looking ahead 3 months, by Trump being in the White House?
Yes, he can be hurt.
How so?
Yes, he can. And he'll have to convince voters that he's not there at the beck and call of the governor and the lieutenant governor, that he's going to be independent. He'll have to convince voters of that.
What'd you make of Beto Altamirano?
It's been a little perplexing for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you could tell me what his candidacy is about.
I like the idea of a new generation of leadership. I like that idea. And, he represents that. I've talked to him several times that you've got to be able to get more specific about what you want to do and not have the generalization of all these concepts. Mm-hmm. It's really hard for a guy that, you graduate from Harvard and you think, my God, I'm the smartest guy around. And so you got to bring it down to where you can talk to voters, and we'll see how he does on that. I advised him, get down here and tell us what you want to do.
Does he remind you of Mike Villarreal?
A little bit. Mike was a very, very smart guy. Was he a Harvard guy too?
Yes.
I don't know, maybe, probably so. And but you can be too high intellectually, you can be too generalized, and people think, what are you talking about, buddy? Mm-hmm. And so you got to be able to get down and say things in a way that people can relate to and give them a pretty darn good idea what you want to do when you get there. Mm-hmm. So, they got some issues to deal with there.
Got some stuff to work through.
And I think the last person who we haven't maybe touched on your general thoughts on our former Air Force Undersecretary Gina Ortiz-Jones. Yes. Kind of what strikes you about her?
Well, I met with her this morning, and she's run a couple of times for Congress, and it was surprised she didn't win the last race. But she is really dived into some of the issues, whether it's child care, affordable housing. She's really got into them. And of course, she comes from a background in the military and service in the Biden administration. And can she relate what she has done there to the realities of San Antonio? What does it mean in terms of jobs and education? And but she's very, very smart. And again, it depends on, how she handles her campaign and what issues she's going to talk about.
Now, what do you think? So, Ron Nirenberg is in the last, 4 months of his last his fourth 2-year term.
Yeah.
So he's out. What do you think the major issues the next mayor is going to be facing? What's on their plate?
Number one, they have to complete the airport project, and there's a lot of controversy over that, as we know right now. Filed a lawsuit by Southwest Airlines, so that's really important from economic development standpoint that they get that right, and so that's going to be a big issue as it goes. Project Marvel, you may want to talk about that later on. That'll be something they have to wrestle with.
We might get to that. Yeah.
I tell you who they need. Who was it that cut the Gordian's knot? Was it Lancelot? Somebody did.
No, he's the one who pulled the stone out of the.
Is that what he did? Okay. Well, that whole thing about Project Marvel is a difficult one to sort out, and I don't know where they're going to end up going with that. But we don't know what's going to happen during the Trump administration. The thing that worries me the greatest, and he's kind of wavering, whether he's going to impose those 25% tariffs. We didn't have any manufacturing here to speak of till we passed the NAFTA. I was mayor at the time when we had a signing here, and then we lobbied for it. And that's grown into a huge manufacturing base, and a lot of it is tied to Mexico. And if you start imposing 25% tariffs, that network that you have begins to break down, and there will be retaliation once you do it. I think long-term tariffs that they're speaking of is a negative long-term, because it just ends up being a fight back and forth. And I think it's going to hurt us if they pass. And I know his staff right now is pushing him to do it. But I don't think it's good for San Antonio. It's certainly not good for our manufacturing base, certainly not good for Toyota. And so that worries me the most about how that's going to be handled. But you have a lot of ongoing issues. This job training thing is still kind of fuzzy-wuzzy. Ready to work. That's going to have to be tackled in the right way. Child care is a big issue for everybody. we have a regional economy here that's strong. You know, we don't have the tremendous wealth of having corporate offices here, but it's going to be important that that candidate understand how he's going to help create jobs, how he's going to help education, and then the overall health care issues that we'll be facing. It could be a trying time for us. It's so hard to know with the turmoil around the world and the issues that Trump and them are going to be pushing, where that may lead us.
Should local officials be concerned about both the threat of mass deportation and ICE raids, and now the reality of them?
I think that's terrible.
I mean, but do public officials have to be worried about, like, even just its impact on the economy? Like, you could imagine, if there's a lot of fear in the immigrant community, you could imagine, construction slowing down, having difficulty for restaurants.
Well, it's going to be difficult. Immigration is important to us. When I was county judge, we took care of 2,200 kids from South America and Mexico, and all really, really good kids. And finally, we got them into where they could settle. But immigrants are important. To treat them and denigrate them is a crime, I think, what they're doing to people. It's important to our workforce. There's a lot of jobs that Americans are not going to do because they're spoiled. I told a good Republican friend of mine, I said, get ready to start cleaning your own toilet because you're going to run everybody else off. But you have a diversity in your immigration. It's not just the low-level jobs. There's a lot of talent out there. And you're going to strike a lot of fear. Just those 2,200 boys that came here, they are all tied to families now.
Right.
What are you going to do, jerk them out of the families they got up here and send them home? It's very, very dangerous way to look at things. I mean, we need an immigration policy. They've done their best to kill it, but immigration is important to us. We're not reproducing, and there has to be some mechanism to bring it together. But just mass deportations, it didn't make any sense to me. Get rid of the bad people. If there's bad people there, get rid of them. But mass deportations, they are a positive economic source for the country. And depending on what he does with them, it could cause havoc around the country.
That the next mayor is going to have to deal with. I'd like to go back to the airport just for a moment. That was kind of at the top of your list.
Yeah.
I think you were referring to the big fight between the city of San Antonio and Southwest Airlines over Terminal C.
That's right.
Megan, could you give us an update on the latest? We've got this thing is kind of ongoing. So
is it?
Yes. So the kind of bare bones of what had happened was there's a long-term lease agreement that basically outlines which terminals, it outlines a lot of things, the fees that airlines will pay to be able to operate out of their gates for the next 10 years with a 5-year potential renewal. And it's a beneficial item for airlines who sign on because they get to pay lower fees. And so you'll see major airlines that operate out of San Antonio, like Southwest Airlines, that take that on. But they have not signed on because they were frustrated that the agreement also mapped out kind of who was going to be in the new terminal, which is set to open in 2028. They just broke ground on it recently. But they are basically being relegated over to remaining in Terminal A, where they've been operating, which is the smallest terminal at the airport and the oldest. And they feel like it was kind of a slap in the face to them, and that they feel like they were basically lied to. They thought that they had been promised, they're accusing in a lawsuit that they had been promised by Airport Director Jesus Saenz space in the new terminal, and that basically they believe they were had that pulled out from under them, as well as had just generally poor practices or illegal practices used to kind of determine who was going to be in the new terminal. But the latest right now is they are going to all be going back to court at the end of April. They had tried to have some negotiations outside of court that just failed. The city basically said that they were just asking too much.
We just can't deal with it.
Yeah.
So are you on Team Southwest or Team City?
Well, I'm on Team San Antonio, trying to get it worked out. The problem,
have you been involved in any talks with Southwest?
No. I had a friend that served on the board a good while there, John Bonford, and he kind of keeps me up a little bit late. But I was in that terminal just this weekend. We flew to Houston, and of course, what we did there, which is, I don't know why.
You're talking about A or B?
The old where Southwest would remain.
Okay, yeah. Terminal.
And I would imagine what they're mostly concerned about is the corridors, because they're very narrow. We went into hobby, which is, like night and day from what we came out of. But there is some advantage to Southwest having a terminal just to themselves. I mean, that shouldn't be sneezed at, and I think they should look at that as a big benefit. I think the city has said they're going to put up $100 million. I think they're up to $200 million now to renovate it. I would hope that they could get Southwest comfortable with that terminal in terms of what they want to do and what is it Southwest wants. But if I was Southwest, I'd love to have a terminal to myself and not have to deal with the other airlines in it. So if they can just work out how they want to modify that terminal for Southwest, that's the best case scenario, I think, because if it starts to fall apart, then all the agreements you got with all the others are going to go away. Now, you got to remember, Southwest was used to controlling San Antonio. I don't know what, at one point they probably had 75, 80% more of the flights. They don't have that anymore. I think they got about.
No, I think it's below 40.
Yeah, it's right under 40.
Yeah, right under 40. So they're not they're still the big carrier, but they're not the.
Yeah, like the increasing competition.
Yeah. So the competition's more, and so that's the best case scenario. I think.
And I think it's Terminal C is interesting because I think Southwest wants to be in the shiny, glitzy new terminal, but I mean the big drawing from the city's standpoint, I think, is that's where they're going to put all of their international service and the clubs. The airline clubs, and Southwest is not really into that kind of thing. They don't do a ton of international service. Is that a smart approach the city's taking to devote this massive Terminal C to international flights? Like, is San Antonio there? Can we sustain that kind of?
Well, I will say it is a mix. It's not all international, but that is where the new customs will be.
Well, we saw what happened with the flight to Frankfurt. When they proposed that, I said, "Have you read the history of San Antonio?" I think we spent $6 million trying to make AT&T happy with flights. And it's all about the market. Does it make sense to have the flight? And if it does, the airline's going to put it here. You give them money, they're going to take the money for whatever period of time. They're going to say adios, which is what they did on this. It only lasts, 6 months? So our international flights are never going to be at the level we would like them to be. Why? Because you can go over to Austin and fly anywhere. And so international flights are important, but you got to have the market to be able to sustain it, and just to subsidize it won't get you there. But I think having that new terminal, like you say, it's international as well as the others, is really, really important to give the facilities that you need to do the airline flights. We're never, ever going to be like Austin. We gave that up. I didn't agree with it, but we gave it up.
Didn't agree with what?
I didn't agree with the fact that we should just focus on what we had. I thought we ought to look 50 years ahead. And Henry Cisneros and I were pushing this. We didn't get anywhere. To do something New Braunfels area or somewhere where you
like
have
a DFW.
Yeah, where you would have a regional airport down here. Now you got to look way ahead to do these things. It took 50 years from the idea of building the airport in Dallas, Fort Worth. It took 50 years to do that from its conception. So you got to think way ahead. So he didn't want to do that. So we're going to have an airport, and it's going to be nice, and it is convenient, but it'll never, ever be what Austin is.
Now, is that because of we've got just a dearth of Fortune 500 corporate headquarters?
That's right.
And other, other corporate headquarters. I mean,
right.
Is that what's
That's it.
fueling it, or is it?
I think you hit the big one.
Yeah.
We've got three, four Fortune 500 companies.
Four.
And then Austin is, it's just taken off a skyrocket, Income levels are so much higher, good corporate base. We have a good, strong regional economy without the big corporate base. And the reason AT&T gave for leaving, truth or not truth, was the fact that we didn't have the airport and the flights to be able to handle a large major corporation. Have we ever attracted one since they left? No.
Right.
So I think for corporate offices, the airport's important.
I also think that Randall Stevenson, who was CEO of AT&T, I think he just wanted to be with the cool kids in Dallas. Also.
Yeah, he was a really jerk, I must say. Mayor Harburger and I were with him the day before.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And we were up there talking about different issues, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I'm having lunch. Mayor Harburger went out of town. What a rat. He should have gone out of town. He should have got the call instead of me. I'm having lunch, and Randall Stevenson calls and says, "We're leaving. Don't think you can do anything. We're out of here. We don't want to hear any excuses." That was it. So what did he do? He took the company and made about 3 big major mistakes. They got a new CEO now. But that was a devastating blow to San Antonio. Devastating. People still don't recognize that is what it did. It was our hope to be able to get more companies. But anyway, we didn't, and we haven't had one since then. But we're very strong in terms of diversified economy with our manufacturing base that we've got going now, with the major issue now of the integration of UT Health and UTSA. I've been following that very closely. And then we have the cybersecurity. You got Port San Antonio. You got the activities that are Brooks Base now. We've got a very strong economy. We got the Alamo that's going to be coming on board. My wife's involved in that. It's going to really rejuvenate that whole area and lead to more tourism. So we got a good diversified, but we're not rich, but we got good jobs and we got a diversified economy. And we're 2.2 million, one of the fastest growing areas in the country now. But we don't have the big bucks that a Fortune 500 can bring.
Yeah. Now, on kind of in that same vein, and this is a very clever pivot to the Spurs and Project Marvel. So just hear me out. So about 6 months before you left office, you did an interview with the great Express News sports writer Tom Worsborn, talking about professional sports in San Antonio. Yeah. And the gist of it, I love this quote. I'm gonna get the lying sons of bitches right, but I'm gonna get the rest. It's like, don't trust those lying sons of bitches.
That's probably what I said. Right. Probably exactly what I said.
That when it comes to the NFL or Major League Baseball or even Major League Soccer, it's not going to happen for San Antonio. And I think it was because of the lack of corporate bench. Is that still the case? I mean, I don't imagine things really changed in your view.
No, it hasn't changed. You have to have a good ability for businesses to buy the advertising, to buy the boxes, and that takes like Fortune 500 companies to be able to do that. And you have to have a high per capita income, which we don't have either one of those two. So it's very hard. You're either a no sports town or 1, 2, 3, or 4. We're one with the Spurs. And we've all done everything we can. I dealt with them for 22 years because they're a tenant of the county. We do everything we can to keep them here. And the fear that people have, and I do too, is that without the Holtz, outside ownership could take us somewhere else. I think as long as Peter Holt's in charge, they're going to stay here. But after that, I don't know. You got the enticement of Austin. You got all the gambling money in Vegas that they're just doling out to everybody. They take money from us and they give it to someone else. And so it is always that fear with outside ownership. Do they even care about San Antonio? I seriously doubt it. They care about their investment and how can they monetize their investment and how can it grow. So it worries me, and I think it worries everybody in San Antonio about that. What can we do to keep them happy here and keep them here in San Antonio?
So obviously, I think one thing the city and county are doing to keep them happy, and the city wants this as well. A new arena for the Spurs at Hemisphere. And I mean, the city wants it, I think, clearly because, they feel like, and I think there's a lot to it, that downtown is just unenergized and they need some spark to bring residents and out-of-towners to downtown San Antonio other than the convention trade. Now, Madison Eisler and I, business reporter, we started reporting on the city's talks with the Spurs. Wow, a long time ago. You were one of the first people I called. And I don't think you were all that familiar with the talks at the time. This was about over a year and a half ago.
This before it even started.
And you were pretty incensed at the idea of the Spurs moving away from the county-owned Frost Bank Center to a location downtown. Are you still of that mind?
Well, first of all, my concern was not so much just that. My concern was that you'd have two public arenas competing with each other within 2.5, 3 miles. That's what was troubling me, and I thought it didn't make a lot of sense that you would have, I don't know any other city that's got two basketball arenas within 2 or 3 miles of each other.
And then throw in the Alamo Dome. Also.
And the Alamo Dome right in the middle of it. But if you can figure out what you're going to do with the existing one if they move, and I know there's talks going on. In fact, I was talking with some of the rodeo people yesterday about what is their attitude, I think they're willing to help bring events to it. I don't think they want to run it.
To the Frost Bank Center?
And then the Coliseum. The Coliseum makes money out there, and so does the 350,000 square feet of exhibit hall. The arena where the Spurs are, the county is supposed to make 20% of the profit of the arena. Over 20 years, how much money we got? The answer is zero. So they're probably not profitable. They're hard to keep up. When you just turn on the air conditioning, you can imagine what that is. Smart thing that Cindy Cryer did when she was county judge and they made the deal. That's all the Spurs' responsibility. They don't pay much. They get the revenue from it. They get the parking. They get all of the stuff from the foods and stuff they sell anyway. So you're going to end up with something there that could be a disaster, like the dome is in Houston, still sitting there empty. So the county's got to figure out how they're going to run that and what they're going to do with it, and they have an obligation to taxpayers not to let that thing just go away. So I know they're struggling with that right now. What do we do if the Spurs move? And they've got to take care of that first. If the Spurs want to go downtown and the city makes the deal and the county helps a little bit, well, fine, let them do it. But the county has got a responsibility to figure out what in the world to do with what they're going to have left when the Spurs leave. How this deal is structured at the site where they're talking about, they certainly significantly have a parking problem. How are you going to get people in and out of that? One of the debates they say was bad about where we are now, you can only enter from South SB's Parkway or from Houston. The other two is railroad tracks and industrial development. Well, when you get down to where they're talking about now, there's only one entrance, and that's from Cesar Chavez. So how do they handle that, from a standpoint of how do you get people in and out and whatnot? So they're struggling with that, I know. And then UTSA owns the land. Now, you'd have a city has a right to buy it, but you got to pay them for that. They can't give it to you. There's got to be some, compensation, reasonable compensation for it.
You're pointing out a lot of challenges here. Do you feel
it is. Like I say, you need somebody. This is one of the most complicated deals that you could come up with, trying to salvage what you got left without it, going down the tubes, and then also build a new one. It's complicated. But it could be worked out. But
do you think it's worth it? Like the risks that y'all would have to be overcome?
It could be worth it if the county can figure out what are they going to do with what they got. Mm-hmm. That's the county's problem. And does it compete with the new arena for events other than the basketball? That's the hard part for the county. They got to figure that out. And then if they got bucks after that, they could help on the other one. But I don't know. I don't know how they're going to put it together. I don't know how much money the Spurs are willing to put into it. As you know, it's getting difficult around the country to own votes for sports, private sports. So I don't know.
So do you think the mindset of voters has changed so much over the last 25 years? Because, voters approve. This was right after the Spurs' first world championship. Yeah. Like right after it. But voters did approve public financing for the Frost Bank Center.
That's true.
Are we past that, do you think?
I don't know that we are, because I went to the voters in 2008 when I was there, and they approved $414 million for different projects, of which $75 million went into the arena, what we have now, and the Spurs put in $25 million, I think. So $100 million was done in improvements. Let's see, that was 2008, probably around 2012 or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. Another $100 million put into it. And so it's just very difficult. I'd hate to be the mayor trying to figure out how to make this thing work, because they've got a certain pot of money. What is your priorities? I don't know if the city said that or not. Convention center, need to expand. Dome, if you're going to keep that rascal, it's going to take money to fix it up.
And then you say that like it's an option. Would you just blow it up, the Alamo Dome?
I thought of some crazy things. I thought, well, what if you converted the Alamo Dome into an arena? I don't know that it can be done, but that thought crossed my mind. But they got to. If you're going to keep it, you got to fix it up. So, how much money for the convention center? How much money to fix up the dome? What are they talking about? A bridge or something?
Land bridge.
Bridge.
So from
what does that cost?
Yeah.
I don't think we know any of those answers yet. And what does that leave for the arena? If that's their objective, convention center, dome.
One of the pots of money they seem to be eyeing is the Bexar County's venue tax. Which strikes me as maybe it's just me. Like I'm not an elected official. It just seems a little ironic to me. It's like, the city and Spurs are going to talk about moving the Spurs from this county-owned facility to downtown. Behind your back. They're not going to let you know they're talking early on.
They did. They did do that.
And then once you find out, it's like, hey,
give me
by
some
the way,
money.
we'd like your help doing this.
Here's the problem of a politician.
Right.
Your county judge or your mayor. Do you want to be the one that didn't help and the Spurs left because of you?
Right.
That's what goes through their mind. I know what goes through their mind. And so the county is struggling. We can't let something deteriorate we got now, and if we take care of that, what do we got left? The county only gets a 2% of the hotel motel. What does the city get? 6 or 7, something like that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's about 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And we've only used 1.75. So the money that generates, it's my understanding, say you didn't raise the rate or whatnot, you probably have 300 and some odd million. I don't know where they've never released their total. At least that's what it was when I left, about 300 and some odd million. Mm-hmm. So what are they going to have to spend to take care of what they've got? And then whatever's left from that, what could they donate to the, I think that's what's going through their mind. How do you reconcile those issues? Yeah. Now the city could go for a vote too, I would think, to raise it. I'm not sure what the rules are there, but they got a pretty big grant coming from the state through that hotel motel. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what their dollars are, and I don't know what the Spurs are willing to put up. I know under the county deal, it's about 16% of the cost of the construction, roughly. Yeah.
Well, with kind of what Greg was saying a bit ago, since the county was left out of a lot of these conversations, it's something that Judge Peter Sakai has kind of criticized, having been left out of a lot of these early talks. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on, I guess, is that just kind of typical for city and county to be on different pages, or do you think there's some kind of other reason that could have happened?
It goes back when Cindy Cryer was judge, and Howard Peak and the city manager at that time did not want to use hotel motel to build an arena. We're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. And the Spurs knew that it wouldn't pass without using that. And so that's why they went to the county, because the county was willing to use what little bit they had to do the hotel motel. That's why they left. Mm-hmm. Everybody thought it ought to have been downtown, including myself. I supported the county once and I was not in office once the city, didn't do the deal. Mm-hmm. But it should have been downtown to begin with. Yeah. And if they just had used their brain, it would have been, but they got hard-headed about it. But now you're in a real, dilemma of how to make both things work. It's hard enough to make one thing work. Now you got to make both things work, or you got to blow up something. Right. I don't know which one you're going to blow up.
So Peter Sakai, the Spurs were really pressing the county for a May vote on the venue tax election.
The numbers I heard, I don't know whether you heard numbers. Have you heard numbers? The numbers I heard at one point was $500 million from the county, $500 million from the city, $500 million. In other words, 2/3 it would be paid by. Now, that was early on. I don't know where that's gone now.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know where that's gone.
So it didn't happen. So it doesn't look, and at this point, it looks unlikely that there's going to be a May election. We can't say for certain yet.
I don't think so. There's no way you can have a May election. It'd go down to defeat. You got to really build your case, and have like you say, the Spurs won the world championship. And,
they could use at least make the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, they do have Wimby, so that's a big one. That's a big one.
Maybe.
But now they're talking. Peter said he would not call an election in May. Right. So let's say you get your new council election, you get your new mayor election, where you look at maybe November, so I think May's out of it, but November, and then you'll have a new mayor, a new council, and who knows what all that's going to be yet.
So Judge Sakai, part of his reasoning, and not just folding and saying, okay, fine, we'll do it in May. Yeah. One is, it's like, we don't even know how much this is going to cost.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
And second of all, he's holding out for some kind of plan to benefit the East Side. This goes back to the election for what is now the Frost Bank Center. A lot of community leaders, a lot of East Side residents feel like that there were implicit promises in that campaign that the East Side would benefit economically, and it never did. Yeah. Do you think, what do you think of Sakai's Gambit here? Is he doing the right thing, holding out for some kind of plan?
So far I think he's handled it right. I think he says, I have an obligation to the taxpayers to take care of the investment we've got now. I've got to do that first. I think that was a very good comment. And then this county hadn't assessed what they want to do. But now it's not fair to say nothing happened on the east side. There's 750 people working at the Dome. We've got convention center now. We got a ton of other people working over there now. And the rodeo built new offices over there. And then you got the big development that occurred less than a mile away, where they built a bunch of new apartments along with the Rosemary's business there. There was some talk about the golf course. City give the golf course to the county. Well, there's a little bit of entanglement there. To take away the golf course, I think you got to get a vote of the voters. But that would be a potential development. I've talked to so many different city people and never got anything done. But I think the city is willing to say, hey, take the golf course and use it for development. But legally, you got to find out that you can do that first. I know before it was always like you need to take a vote. So it's a difficult project. If you didn't have the existing arena, it'd be so much easier.
So do you think, you said that no politician wants to be the one in office if the Spurs ever hit the road.
That's right. That's right.
Do you think coming out of this, if these plans for downtown arena implode, it just goes nowhere, do you think the Spurs go? Do they leave San Antonio?
They have a lease with the county to 2032.
Yeah.
What is that? That's 7 years away now, not very long away. So if something needs to get done, they've got to do it in that time frame. I think if they left today, they'd give the county, I think county gets a penalty of some 100 and some odd million. But then as it gets down closer,
at least less, like vanishingly small.
Less amount they have to pay. I don't know what's going through their mind. I really, really don't. I think a new arena is something like $1.2 billion, something like that. I don't know what their what their game plan is if it doesn't happen. I don't know what it is. But I do know that the existing arena is going to take $100 million or so at least to keep up. About every 10, 20 years, you got
to keep it viable.
Yeah, all the new technology and everything. It was $100 million. Maybe it's more than that now. But that's roughly what it was. That's what we were thinking we'd have to spend. But now, you still have to spend it whether they leave or not, because if you're going to keep it, you got to have a. So it's a hard one. Huh? It's. I'm glad I'm just sitting here talking about it. I don't have to make the decision.
Have you offered any advice to Sakai?
The only advice I've offered to Sakai is that you're going to lose a lot of money when they leave, and you're going to have to.
That's terrible advice.
You're going to have to set aside a fund for that. So much per year. I know when the Spurs left the Dome, I think they started losing about $2 million a year. So say that's $40 million over the last 20 years or so. I think they had 1 year of profitability. So you got to have a fund set aside for that to subsidize whatever you're going to do at the arena. So my only advice to him, it's your obligation to take care of that first, and then whatever else you can do to help on the other one, fine.
Right.
But you got to take care of that first. And they're struggling with that right now. What are we going to do with it?
So last question, but it's a big one. It's about Project Marvel, which is this several billion-dollar plan to create a sports and entertainment district kind of on the southeast corner of downtown. I think the Spurs Arena is kind of envisioned as the part of this thing. I mean, it would include, an upgraded Alamo Dome, everything you mentioned.
Yes.
New convention center, hotel, all that.
Yes.
And the idea is to kind of bring some life back to the city.
Yeah.
Would it work? Does that? Oh
yeah.
Is that a viable plan?
I like the whole idea of the overall part Project Marvel. It's just that they've got this one little stumbling block on it. But let's say that didn't work.
Yeah.
You got to expand the convention center. You have to take care of whatever the dollars are going to be for the dome. And if you did a land bridge, I think that would be really cool. But you do have, I think it's UTSA is either 12 or 16 acres there that's ripe for development, whether it's the arena or whatever else they may want to do there. But it's a perfect place for economic development. And our Convention and Visitors Bureau, you got to keep that up and going. Tourism is still a big part of our economy. And now you got the Alamo that will open in 27, I think, when they finish the new museum. And it's going to be, I think, a big step up to drawing people here. Those things are important to get done. And then if we can get the arena, that's fine. Hope it works for them, but it's a difficult one, as we can all know.
Yeah. All right, Nelson Wolff, you have books to write, so I'm going to let you go.
That's right.
you
I got books to sell.
Well, so you passed the writing stage. You're in the selling stage. That's cool. Okay, good. And when's your baseball book coming out?
It should come out in April.
What's it called?
It's called The Elysian Fields of Baseball. Elysian. What is Elysian Field? That goes back to the Greeks. They believed that the righteous will live forever in the Elysian Fields right here on earth, among splendid trees and fruits and greenery, and it's just a beautiful place where we live forever. So Elysian Fields is that mythical place we all look for, and that's kind of what I write about in the book.
Awesome. Is it Trinity University Press? Or
No. It's really interesting. They've done a couple of my books, but I found this couple, really great couple, McProdger, Diane and his wife, and they have just a little small publishing company. But they're very good. He's written books, so he reads it all. I don't have to pay them. I just have to guarantee I'll sell 1,000 books, and that's relatively easy for me. But they're tremendous, and they understand the business, and they also understand literature and have published a lot of different books. So it's really fun to work with them because he'll come up with some ideas. I was looking for a picture of when it was Elysian Fields of Hoboken, when baseball was a wonderful amateur game, and they found a really great picture going back. We think there's not any copyrights to it, back 19th century, of them playing ball out in nature with the trees behind them in an open space, and so they're really
awesome.
Really good to work with.
Public domain. It's great. Free, totally free. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. If you've not signed up for the ENside Politics newsletter, drop down to the, what do we call it? The show notes. Go to the show notes, click the link and sign up. And thank you very much. We will see you back here next week.